Welcome to my Spotlight video series. All materials presented in my video are from publicly available sources. I have provided the link to all my sources in the description, so sit back, relax, enjoy, and maybe learn a thing or two. In today's video, I will share with you 5 ways the Government of Canada is greening its supply chain. When we talk about green procurement, we have to look at a few major driving forces. First is the Paris Agreement. Canada made some very important greening commitments in that agreement, one of which is that Canada is committed to achieve a net zero emissions by 2050. The second is the Greening Government Strategy, where Canada makes some bold commitments and sets a few targets for the Scope 1, 2, and Scope 3 emissions. Scope 1 emissions are greenhouse gases produced directly from sources like cars and buildings. Scope 2 emissions are those generated indirectly, like heating and cooling. Scope 3 emissions are indirect emissions resulting from day-to-day activities. Thirdly, there's the policy for green procurement. Lastly, there are various standards and guidance for green procurement that direct each department on how to apply and report on its green strategy. Now, diving into the 5 ways the Government of Canada is greening its supply chain. Commitments. Besides the Paris Agreement, the government has made commitments such as investing in hybrid cars and low-carbon producing transportation, net zero emissions from its buildings, whether new construction or retrofits, purchasing goods and services with the environment in mind, engagement with local communities, building a sustainable workplace, strategic buying. When we look at the whole life cycle of the supply chain, from raw materials, transportation, manufacturing, to finished goods and disposal, we can pinpoint areas where the government has the most impact. These would be procurement, contract management, and disposal. Knowing this, steps can be taken to implement greening. For example, let's look at 2 major sources of carbon emissions in the Canadian government. There are emissions from heating and cooling 37,000 government buildings. There are also emissions from maintaining more than 100,000 carbon-producing road vehicles. All of these things generate carbon emissions of upwards of 5,000 kilotons of carbon dioxide per year. That is the equivalent of 11 billion pounds of emissions. One way for the Government of Canada to tackle this is by changing its buying habits. If you look at the 7,000 supply chain and standing offers that the government has right now, 40% of those have an environmental criteria. As well, a department like Service Canada is replacing data centers with LEED certificate centers. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. On a side note, according to Statistics Canada, 3.7% of total new vehicles in Canada were zero-emission vehicles. So clearly, we as consumers are slowly changing our habits as well. Guidance. The government has put in place management frameworks that will take those environmental considerations and implement them. It has various departments leading the charge for greening. Departments like Treasury Board, Public Works, Shared Services Canada, all of these departments ensuring that they implement the right policy. The government is also training its public servants on green procurement. To date, more than 7,000 employees have taken the green procurement training since 2014. Reporting. In line with the Paris Agreement, the government is incentivizing major suppliers to disclose their greenhouse emissions. It is also requiring that they disclose their environmental performance. Things like having an energy certified labels, eco-labels, are ways suppliers are disclosing their environmental certifications for the Government of Canada contracts. The policy on green procurement requires that all departments monitor and report on their procurement. Action. Some action that the government has taken include: green was made mandatory in some goods and services like office furniture, printers, clothing, vehicles, and more, requiring that all wood used in the manufacturing of products offered must originate from a certified, sustainably managed forest. Also requiring sustainably managed packaging in their distribution, making sure corrugated containers use at least 80% of recycled content, blanket wrapping to be used for short distances of 100 kilometers or less, requiring that all chemicals come from a manufacturer who has a chemical management plan. New buildings must be net zero carbon ready. 75% of vehicle purchases must be zero emission vehicles or hybrids, requiring that the government eliminate unnecessary use of single-use plastics in its day-to-day operations, its events, and its meetings. In conclusion, the Government of Canada is greening its supply chain through commitments, strategic buying, guidance, reporting, and taking action. I hope this video has shed some light on what the Government of Canada is doing to green its supply chain. Now I ask you, how is your government greening their supply chain, and how are you as an individual incorporating green into your life? Let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Be sure to listen to my Supply Chain Ambassador podcast, where I talk to a Government of Canada official on greening. Thank you for watching.